When I saw it yesterday, there was probably about 50 of us in the screen, and everyone was just sat there in silence, like just contemplating what they had experienced. Hacksaw Ridge is the story of Desmond Doss, who is a young man in the 1940s who signs up to the army during the war. And basically what happens is he decides through his morals that he doesn't want to bear arms or kill anyone during the war, something which is completely unknown to the US Army. He becomes the first ever conscientious objector. Now, this disrupts his training, and to the point that he gets court-martialed for his decision not to bear arms. Basically, through a court process, he gets cleared and he gets sent to Okinawa in Japan as a medic. Now, Hacksaw Ridge is set in Okinawa in Japan, and basically the premise of it is the US Army need to take Hacksaw Ridge from the Japanese to win the war in Japan. So basically what happens on the ridge is Desmond Doss saves over 75 lives by getting them to safety and treating their wounds. And what makes this even more remarkable than a Hollywood story is that it is a true story. Back in the director's chair after a 10-year absence is Mel Gibson, following on from his films Apocalypto, The Passion of Christ and Braveheart. And playing a lead role is Andrew Garfield as Desmond Doss. Also is Teresa Palmer playing Dorothy, who is Desmond's love interest. His dad played by Hugo Weaving, and the Army Corporal played by Sam Worthington. And finally, Vince Vaughn as an army sergeant, and I will talk about that a bit more. So let's get into the good points and the bad points about this film. So the first good point about this film, and the major good point, is the story. Now, the story is everything in a film, and Mel Gibson plays this story perfectly. He gives enough time to each element and lets the story flow as it should. The film is split into two halves. So the first half we have kind of the backstory of Andrew Garfield's character, the dealings with his family and then his girlfriend and wife, and also the training aspect when he enlists in the army. And then the second half is the war side of the film. Now, the first half is perfect. Like, the story that is built, we really get to care for the character and care for his relationships with the people around him, especially his girlfriend and wife, and we can really invest in that, which takes us in to the second part of the film. You know, a lot of films, a lot of romantic films, spend 2 hours trying to construct a relationship between two people or a few people, and it just doesn't work, and you don't care for them. Mel Gibson does this in half an hour, 45 minutes, and that is the sign of a true director. Now, the second half of the film, yes, it is a war film, so it's gory, but it tells the story perfectly, and it allows us to kind of invest in the character and see Andrew as Desmond, his journey through the war and how hard it was, and his like crazy feats of heroism that he does in saving all these people. And the story as a whole really brings us in as a viewer, and any good film should do that, so I'm giving that a good. Next up is the casting in this film. Every cast member plays their role perfectly. You know, there's some surprising cast choices in the sense of Vince Vaughn as an army sergeant playing a dramatic role, but it just works. Even he excels in his role, and I would go as far to say that each main character and supporting actor in this, or actress in this film, plays their role out of their skin. It is probably the best performances they have done of their career, and it really, really elevates the level of this film to higher echelons. You know, people like Hugo Weaving, he's only in a few scenes, but what he delivers in those scenes really shows you his character and really gets you to care for his character. Because let's face it, a film is as good as its story and its characters. If you don't care about the story and you don't care about the characters, then the film will fail. And these 2 points, especially the characters and the castings, just work perfectly. I didn't like Vince Vaughn as an actor. He gets on my nerves quite a lot, but in this film he is brilliant. He uses little subtleties with Andrew Garfield to kind of build their relationship as a sergeant and a army recruit, and it just works perfectly. And the relationship between Andrew Garfield and his girlfriend, wife, Teresa Palmer, just works perfectly as well. Every relationship and dynamic in this film, casting wise and character wise, just fits together like a nice jigsaw puzzle, and as I say, it just elevates the film higher and higher and higher. So that is another good point for this film. So I've just mentioned it there, and I quickly want to talk about the kind of the romantic aspect of this film. Yes, it's a war film, but obviously to get to that point where we care about Andrew Garfield, we need to see his relationships. And I've briefly mentioned it before. what Mel Gibson does in the first 45 minutes, a lot of films can't do in 2.5 hours. He connects people and he gets the audience to care about the relationships and care about the people involved. And that is no more so than Andrew Garfield and Teresa Palmer as Desmond and Dorothy, who eventually get married. Within a short space of time, we see their relationship and we see their connection on screen. And to the point, there's one little bit in the film where there's a bit of trepidation. And even myself in the cinema, I was kind of like gasping when that scene unfolds, which I don't do a lot in the cinema. So the relationship and the kind of romance part of the film works really well, even though it's a war film. So that's another good. If we're going to talk about all elements of the film, let's talk about the music score. The music score in this film is exquisite, to the point that I spent all evening last night, whilst I was working and writing a review for this, I listened to it on my headphones and I was just lost in the music, and it brings again another level to this film. Each kind of layer of this film just elevates it, and the music score is no less. It just really packs a punch when it needs to, and it's quite subtle when it needs to as well. So overall, I'm going to give that a good, and I will be listening to the soundtrack for a long time to come. I'm going to switch it on after this review, actually. As I've mentioned, this is a war film, so we've got to talk about the war scenes. The war scenes in this film, yes, they are bloody gory. They are gritty, they are real, it feels like hell on earth. And I've read a few reviews and watched a few reviews where people are saying this kind of goes against Andrew Garfield's character Desmond's kind of morality and his beliefs about not killing. He's staunchly a kind of Christian, and that's his belief that God doesn't want you to kill people. And with the bloody violence in this film, people kind of think that it goes against what he's thinking. But for me, the gore and that, although it was excessive, it was never gratuitous. And that's what is basically the point of this, is it goes to the point where it shows you how bad war can be. Remember, in the 1940s, it was a lot closer combat and a lot more hand-to-hand and kind of close in and stuff. And that works kind of in this film, and you see the rawness of it, and it's needed to kind of tap into your emotions as a viewer and feel what Andrew Garfield's character is going through. That kind of action sequences in it and the camera work of the war scenes are absolutely exquisite. Mel Gibson's really good at kind of capturing moments within a grand moment of the war, like, you know, because obviously there's a lot of people fighting, but he captures little moments within that, and you see kind of Andrew Garfield dipping in and out trying to save people. And it just, again, as a film, it's another layer that just slots in and pushes it up, and it pushes your emotion in the film and gets you kind of enthralled in it. Like, people were just fixated when these war scenes are going on, and believe me, when they kick in, they kick in. It is like a shock to the system, because you've been built up over this kind of backstory and kind of romantic side and training and that, and then the war kicks in, and that's how it should be. It should kick in and it should really shock you as a viewer, and it was done perfectly, like pretty much everything else in this film. So that's another good. So the last thing I want to talk about is the emotion that this film invokes in the viewer. Now, the best way to describe it is, you know, when you go to the cinema and you kind of watch a film and the credits start rolling and your mind kind of snaps back into reality, and you pick up your things to leave the cinema, or you turn to your friend and start talking. When I saw it yesterday, there was probably about 50 of us in the screen, and everyone was just sat there in silence, like just contemplating what they had experienced. No one said a word, and it was just like the most surreal moment I've seen after a film. People were just kind of dumbfounded, and the best way I can describe this film is, you're not going to see a film, you're going for an experience, and that's exactly what it is. This film and the way it works and the elements and the way Mel Gibson has directed this, I cannot give plaudits highly enough for this, is he manages to invoke so many emotions out of you within the space of 2 hours. You know, within the film, I laughed, I kind of whooped, which I never do, like I'm quite reserved in the cinema, and I almost cried. You know, it just brings everything. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it now, and it really stuck with me after the film had finished. You know, I got in my car, I turned my radio off, and I just sat there and drove home and thought about the film. Even to the point this morning, I woke up and the film's still got its kind of claws in me. I'm still thinking about it and kind of the experience of going through and watching that film, and I think it'll be that way for a long time to come. And if that can do that, if a film can do that to a person, then it has done everything it needs to do. It's put everything in place that's right, and it is just a perfect film. So I'm going to give the emotion kind of it invokes in the film as a good. And finally, as you can probably tell, I bloody love this film. I genuinely think it's one of the best films I've seen. It's going to definitely go probably into my top 3 films of all time. And standing up against other war films like Saving Private Ryan, Apocalypto Now, and Full Metal Jacket, I think this could possibly be one of the best war films that's ever been made. Again, goosebumps again. I'm just like, when I think about it, it just brings so many emotions to me. And actually, the way it's shot and the way it's directed, it feels like an older film. It feels like true Hollywood. It doesn't feel Hollywoodized. I know that's probably not a word, but there's elements within it where it could have gone very Hollywoody and kind of wrapped up in a nice package, and it doesn't. It keeps it raw and it keeps your emotions within it, and I think that's perfect. And it brings you a bit of reality, I suppose, in a Hollywood kind of sense. It's just an absolutely exquisite film. Like, I literally, as you can see, I've got no bad points about it. I think it's going to live long. It's going to be looked upon in years to come as like one of the best films and one of the best war films ever to be made. And I think Mel Gibson's going to go down as one of, probably with his track record so far, he's going to go down as one of probably the greatest filmmakers, directors that there's ever been. There's not much more I can say about it, really. Just go and see it, experience it. If you don't believe my review, go on Twitter, #Hacksaw Ridge, and you will see tweet after tweet after tweet of people saying this is the best film I've ever seen. This is amazing. This film done this to me. Go and read the reviews. Pretty much all the reviews are going to be similar to mine. It is genuinely one of the best films ever made. So as always, if you've got this far, I truly appreciate it. If you enjoyed the review, please give it a like, which is a thumbs up down below. And then also comment in the comment section if you've seen the film. Do you agree with what I've said? Do you think there's any bad points to the film? And finally, if you can, please subscribe to my channel. For me, that shows me that I'm doing the right thing. The more subscribers I get and kind of bringing you decent content, and I'm still learning, so it spurs me on to keep creating content and keep getting better. So please, if you can, subscribe. And that's it for today. Go and see Hacksaw Ridge, please, and tell me what you thought down below. And I'll see you soon. Cheers.